The NCAA Tournament is officially upon us. How should Pacers fans be watching the bracket now that the draft matters more to this franchise than ever? And what do looking at stats for trios tell us about the Pacers? The best trios, the worst trios, who does and doesn't fit? And what could it tell us about the future of this team? We'll break it all down today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers as always. My name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and the Westside Community News. And today we are talking NCAA Tournament. We're talking good trios and bad trios on the Pacers. It's a lot of evaluation today. How should Pacers fans watch the tournament? What should fans be looking out for? What matchups are good? What regions are the best to watch? How should Pacers fans watch the tournament? I'll get into that. And I also want to talk about trios. I was digging through some stats today, looking at the best and worst trios on the Pacers since the trade deadline, since they really reshaped their team. And it actually told me a lot that I was not expecting. Who are the best trios on the Pacers? What does it tell us about the future of some guys in this team? Who are the worst trios? Same thing. What does it tell us? We'll get to it today. But also today is Thursday, which means it is the official first day of the NCAA Tournament. Our play-ins are done. My Hoosiers, if you can't tell by my shirt on YouTube, are moving on. And our first games are coming up. And it's time for some tournament action. How should Pacers fans consume the tournament? And this tournament matters more. Prospects are playing, and the Pacers are going to be picking very high. They could have 2 first-round picks. They could have 3 of the top 30. This is when a lot of people watch college basketball for the only time this year. So it's important to kind of know what to watch for and how to watch. Now, let me tell you one thing first. Do not fall in love with a guy and irrationally place a player on your draft board or for your Pacers desires because they play well in the tournament. That is a trap. These guys, NBA teams spend so much money on scouting. They've been watching these guys for years. They know more about them than you ever will. And it does happen where guys get overdrafted because of the tournament. That usually does not end up going well. But do not like you can move a guy up on your own board a little bit, maybe up a tier or something, but do not put some dude in the top 10 who has a nice tournament who most scouts who've been watching these guys for years and years have like early second round or late first or something. So enjoy the games and move guys up and make your own opinions. Guys will have good tournaments. Remember DiVincenzo, for example, he was actually a success story of the good tournaments bias where he flies up from the second round to almost a lottery pick. But that kind of stuff happens all the time. But on a more serious note, what is the best region for the Pacers fans to watch? What is the best matchups to watch? What are the best games to watch individually? I think there's 2 regions that stand out. They both have West in the name, the Midwest region and the West region. I think there's the most NBA guys in those regions, and especially so the most top guys in those regions. The Midwest region has Kansas, who has 2 guys who could go in the first round. It's got Iowa, who has Keegan Murray, who I think is probably top 7 in this draft. It has LSU, who has Eason, who's probably going to be a top 10 pick in this draft. It's got Wisconsin, who has Johnny Davis, who could be a top 10 pick in this draft. And it's got Auburn, who has Jabari Smith, who could be the number 1 pick in this NBA draft. So that region could have 4 of the top 10 picks in one region, and maybe even better depending on how things go. So that one, I think, if no one only watches one region, that'd be corny and dumb. But if you can only watch one region, or if you're trying to decide what games to watch, maybe focus a little on that region, because there's a very good chance if you pick a random game from the Midwest region, you'll get an NBA level player in any game you watch. And I'll get to this point later a little bit too, but I think the best games for Pacers fans to watch individually throughout the tournament are going to be ones that have NBA guys playing for both teams. They're going against each other. You can see how they play against top level talent, or how they do against good teams in general. And that region is prime for it. Like, it's pretty easy for LSU Wisconsin to be a second round game, which could have Eason versus Davis in the second round, which would be 2 top 10 guys. And then if that happens, then the winner of that game would be in the Sweet 16, or they could play Auburn and Jabari Smith, and like Keegan Murray could very easily play Kansas. Like, it's super easy to me to see how that all could happen. So I think that's a pretty likely region to be one of the best ones for the Pacers to watch, Pacers fans to watch, because it has so much NBA talent. But the West is also really awesome. Gonzaga, the number 1 seed, obviously has Chet, who could be the best player in this draft. A lot of mocks still have him number 1, and Gonzaga just in general produces all these great NBA talents. Perhaps someone on that team could be a fringe guy. And then Jalen Duren at Memphis is right there. They could play in the second round. Like that's another one of those NBA guy versus NBA guy things. And Duren's projected to be a lotto guy, and he's a center, which the Pacers have a lot of those, but that you never know. This region also has Duke, who has two potential top 10 picks, and that's big time. And they probably won't, there's not a ton of NBA talent on their side. Duke versus uh, Ellis from Alabama could be one, I suppose, but there's not like a ton of NBA guys Duke would play if they play Gonzaga in the Elite Eight. But so that region isn't amazing for NBA on NBA talent, but just because it could have three top 10 picks in one region, I think it's very good. And you all know where Ivy is. If you're listening to this, you know something about Purdue. They're worth watching, and they could play Kentucky, and Shaden Sharp's not playing, so Kentucky's a little different of an experience. They also have Ty Washington. That's a good one as well. So basically, that's the East region. That one's good. The South region has good players. I love Ben Mather, and there's some NBA dudes there, but that's easily my least, I think, NBA one of all the regions. So I think if you have to rank the regions, Midwest is the way to go for watching NBA talent, followed by West, East, and South. But the big thing for Pacers fans to watch is the best teams, not necessarily the regions. And I think everybody knows who those are. You can just check the seeds, obviously. But on an NBA level, Duke's going to have two guys who go very high. And Chet Holmgren could go number one. And Jabari Smith could go number one. And Kentucky has a top 10 guy, and maybe two, but the other one's not playing. And you all know about Purdue. Like, it's pretty easy to find the NBA level guys. But that is something else for Pacers fans to watch in this game is if you're trying to decide between one game or the other, check which one has the NBA players or potential NBA players or even top 20 picks, for example, playing in it. Like Duke has three potential top 20 picks. Auburn, if you go to 20, has another one in Kessler. And like there's a bunch of options like that. Like if you go out to 20, you probably get two Baylor guys all of a sudden. That region, maybe the East region, I should have maybe popped up a little more in this exercise. I love Kendall Brown at Baylor. But, that is the second tiebreaker thing to watch if you're a Pacers fan. Actually, that should be first. Pick games with NBA guys and try to pick those regions that feature those games and options the most. I think Duke's going to be a big one, obviously, for Pacers fans. AJ Griffin and Paolo, both fantastic players, could go top 7 even. Both of them could. So that's a good one to start at. But any of those teams that have a guy or two in the top 20 seem like a good place to start if you're a fan of this team. Best games, I already talked about Holmgren versus Duren and Duke versus Ellis at Alabama and Ty Washington versus Ivy. I went through every single one of my noted NBA matchups on this list already. But I think for NBA guy versus NBA guy, the Midwest region's a lock to have a couple awesome games, like with Kansas, Iowa could be a good Sweet 16 game that would have a lot of NBA guys, in LSU and Auburn or Wisconsin or whoever makes it over there, if they make it. The tournament can go off the rails so quickly. That region is ripe for a ton of NBA, like good NBA player versus good NBA player level of matchups. And there's a lot of NBA talent in the tournament. Obviously, those guys usually make it. But that region seems like the one that will have the most games with NBA player versus NBA player talent. And then, Baylor and Kentucky and Purdue also prop up the East region quite a bit there. So if I'm a Pacers fan watching the tournament, and I don't really watch college basketball that much, I think the region to go for is the Midwest and hop onto those games and try to find all the NBA versus NBA matchups that you can. But my number one takeaway for everybody with all this stuff is always have fun. Don't watch stuff that you don't want to watch. If it's not enjoyable, it's not worth your time. And my final point is root for the Hoosiers. Unless you're a Purdue fan, then root for Purdue. And if you don't root for either of those schools and you're listening to this, cheer on the listeners of Locked On Pacers who most likely most of them went to one of those two schools. And the IUPUI women's team is in the tournament as well. IU women are very good as well. If you want to watch the women's tournament, I highly recommend doing that as well. It's going to be awesome this year. I love that they have the home sites for the Hoosiers this year in Bloomington for the first two rounds of that women's tournament. So yeah, that is my watch guide for Pacers fans this year. Those three regions stand out the most. I know someone's like, the East region's got Rick Barnes and Villanova and Arizona. And I love Ben Mathurin, and there's some good teams there. And Kelvin Sampson's got Houston looking really good in the Ken Pom stuff, but that's not as strong of an NBA region as all the rest. So that's my NCAA tournament watch guide for Pacers fans. I'm sure I overlooked something, but that is how I'm kind of strategizing. If I can watch games, I want to watch the ones that have potential NBA players in them, and because the Pacers are where they are, potentially guys who could be future Pacers in them as well. Let's move on and talk about trios, because I thought this was fascinating and I wanted to do a whole show on it, but the NCAA tournament hijacked one of my segments. The trio stats, you can go on NBA.com and sort by groups of 2, groups of 3, groups of 4, and groups of 5 for lineup data. And the Pacers, I did 3 because 2 is too small. You could easily be influenced by 3 outside guys. 4 is too many. At that point, it's basically just a full lineup. But 3 is right in the middle where there's a little bit of outside influence, but not enough to drastically change stuff. But that's also enough of your lineup that it can tell you a story. And I learned a lot looking at the Pacers' best and worst trios. So let's talk about those. But before we do that, I got to tell you guys about one of our newer partners here at Locked On Pacers, Athletic Greens, which I started taking because I didn't have time to eat healthy as much in the morning and I wanted better gut health. And I've been taking it for about 2 weeks now. I love it. It doesn't taste like it's really healthy. It's like tropically and really mild. It's perfect for the morning, honestly, when I'm just groggy. And I look forward to it. It's great. So what is it? With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're getting 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source, superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to start your day right. I, again, have it right when I get up in the morning, the AG1 product. You just put in a little shaker. My girlfriend has some as well. It's easy to take with me to work because they give you a little cup that has a nice screw cap. It's really perfect for the way I get my day going. It's pretty cheap. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, or dairy free. It's perfect for you. Less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals. It's fantastic. Over 7,000 5-star reviews. Right now, time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially heading into flu and cold season. The weather is making that coming up really fast. Just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. Making it easy. Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you got to do is go to athleticgreens.com/NBA Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NBA Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Thank you for making Locked On Pacers your first listen every single day for your second listen. Check out Locked On now to hear about the latest and greatest around the NBA last night from our local experts here at the Locked On Network. Let's talk about trios. I actually wanted to do this segment earlier this week, but the Grizzlies made for fun topics, and that game was atrocious and needed the Pacers. The Pacers needed a good roasting after you lose by 33 to Memphis. So you can sort, as I said before the break, by 3-man lineups on NBA.com. And so I did that earlier this week. And I was stunned by the results, and I keep teasing this, and I will just say, these make Buddy Hield look awesome. You sort by net rating, and the top 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the top 8 trios on the Pacers since the trade deadline in net rating all have Buddy Hield in them. Buddy Hield, Brissett, Duarte. Buddy Hield, Brissett, Jalen Smith. Buddy Hield, Jalen Smith, Terry Taylor. Buddy Hield, Goga, Jalen Smith. Buddy Hield, Brogdon, Jalen Smith. It's crazy. He's in all of them. The best group without him is Goga Bitadze, O'Shea Brissett, and Halbert as a trio. Every trio the Pacers have with a net rating over 10 since the All-Star break. And by the way, I made a minutes qualifier of at least 50 minutes played to get out some of the junk in this. So that's a lot of minutes. That's over a full game. Every lineup with a net rating of 10 or better features Buddy Hield. He has a huge positive impact on the teammates that he's been playing around since he joined the Pacers. It's really been remarkable, the player he's been compared to the guy he was in Sacramento, and the player he's been for a Pacers team that needed his specific skill set. So before I dive in more into that, what are the best offensive trios since the trade deadline? The top 15 feature Buddy Hield. 15 units all have Buddy Hield. The 16th unit is Halliburton, Jalen Smith, and Dwayne Washington Jr. And then the 16th one goes back to having Buddy Hield in it. He is just propping up the Pacers offense. He is involved in every sort you do that's good sorting. Buddy Hield is there. Defensive rating, the top defensive groups, the top 2 have Halliburton, 3 of the top 4 have Halliburton, 4 of the top 6 have Tyrese Halliburton. He's done a good job of being a connecting defensive player since joining the team. A lot of the top defensive units also have Jalen Smith. Jalen Smith quietly having a nice high defensive impact. He's in the top 2. He's in 3 of the top 5 and also 4 of the top 6 and 5 of the top 7. So Jalen Smith, Tyrese Halliburton, and Buddy Hield looking good in the trio units since the deadline. And what's interesting about that is those are the 3 guys they got at the trade deadline, and they're already paying dividends, fitting in with their new team regardless of who the third player is, helping both on offense and the defensive side of the ball. Notable absences from this group. Duarte not in anything noteworthy here. Malcolm Brogdon not in anything noteworthy here. Goga Bitadze not in anything noteworthy here. A lot of guys are mixed in, a couple of these every so often, like Brissett's in the 4th best defensive group, but his name didn't come up much. Dwayne Washington's in the 6th best defensive group. His name doesn't come up a ton. But those three guys are really everywhere. So what does this tell us? Well, let's do the obvious one first. Shooting is good, right? The top trios, if you sort by true shooting, top 6 all feature Buddy, like 9 of the top 15 all feature Buddy Hield. Shooting is great. And the Pacers, they had Doug McDermott, they lost him. Justin Holiday took a step back shooting the ball until about the last month he was on this team. Jeremy Lamb's shot betrayed him. Miles Turner's shot betrayed him. Brogdon's shot betrayed him this season. They went from having some shooting weapons last year, not a lot, but some, to none, basically. To the very, very few three-point shooting weapons this season. And Buddy Hield, for all his warts as a player and for all the problems the Kings had with the way he played and the impact he had, is a great shooter. One of the 10 best shooters in the NBA right now. And given the history of the league and their encouragement of threes, maybe one of like the 25 best three-point shooters ever, right? And Rick Carlisle is very encouraging of threes. I've talked about that a ton on the show. If you can shoot, if you're in the game, he lets you shoot threes. If you're open, take it. And Buddy is awesome at it. His three-point warm-up routine is awesome. He takes way more threes than anyone else that I watch warm up for games. Obviously, that's his thing. But shooting is good, obviously, and Buddy Hield is awesome at it, and his shooting since joining the Pacers has been very strong. So it's not a shock to me that he has this strong impact himself. I mean, he's not even shooting that well from three since joining the Pacers, 34.5% on 8 attempts per game, but his overall field goal percentage since joining the Pacers, 46.5%, would be the second best of his career, and really the best of his career if extrapolated over a full season. He had a brief half season after getting traded from the Pelicans to Sacramento where it was better. So he is just lighting up the nets. He's got something going on working for him, and as has been well documented, he's passing better than he ever has by a million miles. Something about Carlisle's system clicks perfectly for him. Buddy Hield is playing very well and having a huge impact on his teammates, and then the spacing element that comes from that, and him always being a willing shooter. James Boyd and I of the Indy Star were talking during the Memphis game in the first quarter when the game wasn't a complete disaster for the Pacers. And there was a possession where I forget who was guarding Buddy Hield. I think it was Zaire Williams, was literally holding his jersey in the strong side corner, not the weak side corner, the strong side corner. I mean, that basically makes the game 4-on-4 on a huge court. Like, it makes the offense so easy. That's why all these advanced stats are like, Buddy Hield in, Pacers great. So that is the first thing we've learned from these trios. And that makes me think if the Pacers go into next season, this doesn't alone make me think that. Buddy Hield playing better than he did with the Kings and having skills that Carlisle likes. Before he arrived in Indiana, I kind of thought, okay, they'll maybe try to build up his value and deal him this offseason, and they still could do that. In fact, for a rebuilding team, that would be a smart thing to do. But if they do want to be good next year, like they've said, a lot of stats say, hey, Buddy Hield's really important for winning for this Pacers team. And if you look at the trios, it makes it seem like a guy who they'd want to keep around to fit in with other players. Jalen Smith fits in a ton of these top trios as well, a ton of them, which is surprising to me given his reputation. He's in he's in 5 of the top 6 trios. Outside of the very number 1 trio, he's in the 5 of the top 6 and 6 of the top 8. Everything with a net rating of 9 or better, there's 8 of them, and he is in 6 of them. And Jalen Smith, same thing as Buddy, right? Came here, obviously was better, but he's been a connecting piece in a way that I didn't think he could be. But this kind of goes back to what happens with Buddy. Jalen Smith's been canning threes. 38% of his threes go in. That means he's defended differently. He can dribble just enough that if they overplay him, he can drive to the basket. 13 points per game is nice, but just having a more refined offensive game and adding to the Pacers with shooting and decent defense, not great. He's got work to do there, especially on the strength side of things. But he's in a lot of these groups too because he can shoot. Shooting is making these 3-man units awesome on offense, and Jalen Smith and Buddy Hield are a big part of that. Obviously, they'd like to keep Jalen Smith given his age and situation. We'll see contractually if they're able to do that. If you look at the best defensive groups, a lot of youth, right? Halbert's in a lot of these. The top 2 defensive trios. The best one is Halbert, Jalen Smith, Chris Duarte. And the second one is Tyrese Halbert, Jalen Smith, and Isaiah Jackson, right? Like, that is all youth. The fourth best one is Brissett, Halbert, and Washington. That's all youth. Buddy Hield sneaks in here a few times, but also Jalen Smith, Dwayne Washington, Terry Taylor is a unit right here with a 106 defensive rating. That's very good. A lot of the good defensive groups have a lot of youth. Very few have Buddy. Brogdon barely sneaks into the top 10 on these. The young Pacers are quietly, decently connected on defense. It's when the vets get involved. When Lance gets in there, when Brogdon gets in there, that things have been a little bit worse on that end of the floor since the deadline. Now, caveats abound. we're talking about the smallest of sample sizes. Like a lot of statistical experts say it takes about 500 minutes for these lineup data to get even sort of relevant to what could be the case. It's not a lot of minutes, but it's more than a full game, and it's enough to make me think maybe there is a trend here, especially when you sort by net rating and you see be healed, be healed, be healed, be healed, be healed over and over and over again, especially when you watch him and see that he's been better than he was for Sacramento. So the best Pacers three-man units in general on both ends suggests Buddy Hield is really helping them. Jalen Smith's providing them value, and the young guys are defending well connected at least. You know, the thing about what I'm saying about their best defensive units is they're still giving up a lot of points. It's just been better than the rest of the Pacers three-man units. This is not to say those guys are good defenders, but their best defensive lineups have featured a lot more youth than I expected when I did this exercise. There was a flip side to this exercise. Bad stuff. Bad trios. What can we learn from bad trios? Are we overhyping someone? Are we underhyping someone? What's going on there? Let's talk about those. But before we do that, let me tell you guys about the good folks over at betonline.ag. It's that time of year again. College basketball's tournament is finally upon us, as we talked about earlier. And for all the latest odds, contests, and player props, betonline.net is the number one source for all of your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, your sports podcasts, and your sports news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all things sports wagering and your sports information needs. They've got live betting, your favorite Vegas casino games, and other sports. Baseball's on there, and now that it's back, it's going to be perfect. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action at betonline.net. BetOnline is where the game starts. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen every single day. For your second listen, I'm just going to pick a random team. Check out Locked On Jazz with the boss man, David Locke, running the show over there. Jazz quietly been pretty good since the All-Star break, surging in the West again. And I was listening to Locked On Jazz today, learn more about the Utah Jazz because I haven't heard a lot about them recently. The worst trios on the Pacers. What do we learn about that? What vets are maybe included here? What young guys are included here? And what does it tell us about the future of the Pacers? Well, the worst trios feature a lot of two guys. And I think I kind of gave it away when I started this segment. But the worst three-man unit for the Pacers: Malcolm Brogdon, O'Shea Brissett, Isaiah Jackson. That's in the starting five, but also has separated from that. 90 minutes, almost minus 30 net rating for that trio. The second worst trio: O'Shea Brissett, Halbert, and Terry Taylor. The third worst trio: Brogdon, Halbert, and Jackson. The fourth worst: Brogdon, Brissett, Halbert. And the fifth worst has Brogdon. The sixth worst has Brogdon. The eighth worst has Brogdon. The ninth worst has Brogdon. Brogdon has been not fitting in as well with the rest of the Pacers since the All-Star break, which is interesting to me because his skills seem like they should fit well. When I watch him, it doesn't seem like he is bogging things down. And when he plays without Halliburton, this is where things get really crazy. Actually, we'll talk about this later as part of this segment. When Brogdon is in and Halliburton's out, the Pacers have a +9 net rating this season. So the fact that he is in so many bad trios is really, really, really interesting to me. But Brogdon is in a lot of these negative trios. Brissett is in about half of the worst ones. Of the bad and negative, of the groups with negative 10 net rating or more since the break, Brogdon is in all but 2 of them, and Brissett is in all but 4 of them. So those two guys are in there a lot. They also both start. However, they're also with Hield a lot because Hield also starts. So those two guys stand out to me. And for Brissett specifically, I think he's involved a lot because a lot of the worst defensive units have him. The 3 worst defensive trios have Brissett. 4 of the worst 5 do. And that really stood out to me because I consider him a good team defender. But it hasn't been really gelling with what the rest of the guys are doing. Sometimes he has to bail some guys out, and sometimes he has to fly around. But as he uses more energy on offense and his random cutting's been really valuable, like he was in a lot of the top offensive trios. On the defensive side, his impact has not looked as strong, especially fitting in with these guys. By the numbers, his defense has not been awesome since the break, and that is something new to consider. I think O'Shea Brissett will be around for at least a couple more seasons with the Pacers. He's still a talented young on their timeline, good player, plays a needed position. But maybe his impact is a little overstated, especially by me. I talk very highly of O'Shea Brissett, but the fit with this new team is he's been better on the offensive end than the defensive end. So I still think he makes sense on this franchise. And I'm not making any changes to my opinions based on 3-man lineup data. But I will say it's something that's interesting to me that Oshae Brissett's in a lot of the worst defensive trios since the trade deadline. The worst offensive trios is kind of a mixed bag. I couldn't really take anything from this. Like the top two groups or the top three groups all have Halbert, but then he's out of the next like five. So really strange to kind of parse through that. Brogdon's also in three of the top four. So there's not a ton of synergy there. So one thing I thought was going to happen is since these two guys, two names that were not very often pictured on the top list, were Chris Duarte and Goga Batadze. And I thought, oh, they're going to be in the worst list. They're not there either. Those two guys are just kind of existing in space. They fit well with some guys, but not others. And their skills are plug and play enough that they're both kind of in the average side. Everybody else is kind of on one of the extremes on both ends of the floor. And Brogdon is the big takeaway here. Like I just said, Oshae Brissett, I think he'll be here for a while. He'll grow in with the new team. He still's only played like 95 games in his career or something. Like I'm not necessarily worried about his fit with this team, although I was surprised to see his defensive trio numbers be what they are. There's a lot of noise in trio numbers too, because you don't know who the other two guys on the floor are. But again, like I said at the start of this trio exercise, they don't mean nothing to me. Brogdon is so fascinating that he's in so many of these bad groups. And this is a duo thing, but he's played a lot with Tyrese Halbert, and that is where I think a lot of this boils down to. Okay, so the same deal as when I talked with Derek Kramer last week. These numbers are just blowing my mind. When Tyrese Halbert and Malcolm Brogdon share the floor with the Pacers, 7 games, play about 24 minutes per game together. That's about half the game. The Pacers net rating in those minutes, minus 18.1. That is horrible. That would be like the worst team ever. and their defense is horrible, 124 defensive rating. Their offense is bad, 106 offensive rating. And that doesn't make sense to me. Neither of them take away from each other at all. I've talked about how they both get good enough touches. They can both play on and off ball, and Brogdon can guard the best guy on the other floor. So maybe this is all just noise. It's only been 7 games with them together, and it could just be small sample size stuff. Because in my head, and Rick Carlisle's head, and both of their heads, they should fit together, and I agree with that. But they haven't. The numbers say they don't, because with Halbert on and Brogdon off for about 26 minutes a game for 15 games with the Pacers for Halbert. Minus 0.6 net rating. That's like capable. That's basically a 500 team. 112.6 offensive rating. That's fine. 113.3 defensive rating. That's fine. But weirdly, when they're together, it doesn't work. Brogdon, same story. Brogdon plus Halbert, like I said, minus 18.1 net rating. Brogdon, no Halbert, plus 9.4 in the 7 games since the trade deadline. It's only 10 minutes a game where we're seeing Brogdon, no Halbert. But 126 offensive rating, amazing in those 10 minutes. 116 defensive rating, not so good. So, what to make of this? Are they a bad fit? No, I don't think so, because the true shooting percentage for the Pacers with both those guys in there so far is 47.2%. That is terrible, right? That is awful. So that will get better. Excuse me, that's Brogdon's true shooting percentage in those minutes. Like that will get better. He's at 67.6 with Halbert off. Right? They should just naturally improve efficiency for one of those guys. And 2, it's been such a small sample that I think it will grow and be better. But as these trio lineups have told us, where Halberton's on a lot of the good side of the trios and Brogdon is not, some of it is Brogdon's been intentionally put with bench units more so he can play some point guard minutes, which a great player with the bench is going to naturally lead to positive minutes. But I've been stunned how much better they've been with one than the other. So I am not taking away anything from these 7 games. And I'm not going to make big, grand changes to any of my opinions of any player based on trios data. But I will say we're getting more and more data now that we've had 15 games since the trade deadline watching this Pacers team that suggests maybe it's better that they're split up. But that is not the takeaway I'm going to have from this exercise. I just think it's another data point that will have to be considered as the Pacers move forward. That said, the biggest takeaway to me was Buddy Hield is massively helping their offense. Jalen Smith's impact is a little underrated. And Malcolm Brogdon has not necessarily been a winning player since the trade deadline. And he's been hurt like crazy this year. They have a whole new team. It's not crazy that that's the case, but it is a little surprising just given his reputation. And that I think, frankly, he's been playing pretty well as an individual since the break. So that's all I got for today. I thought those stats were all interesting. I thought the tournament stuff would be helpful for Pacers fans who don't watch very much college basketball. So I hope everybody has a great day tomorrow. I'm not really sure what we're talking about yet. I've tried reaching out to 2 guests, have not had any success there. So we'll see what we're going to do, but I promise I'll think of something cool. But it will be awesome. And I hope you guys enjoy the first day of the NCAA tournament and whatever basketball action you watch tonight. We'll be back tomorrow talking Pacers as usual. Everybody have a great day, and we We'll see you tomorrow.